All right, welcome back to America Talks Live. Let's talk about California, the Golden State. It's going to be the first state to require solar panels for all new homes being built. That mandate goes into effect in 2020. And according to a report on CNBC, the California Energy Commission's action is expected to add an average of $9,500 to the cost of building a new home. Only 15 to 20% of new single-family homes in the state include solar installations. The mandate would also make it at least $25,000 more expensive to build new homes than those built to the current code. So two different numbers there. Some say as much as $25,000. Some say closer to $10,000. But either way, it's going to make housing more expensive in one of the most expensive places in the country to buy a house.
Yeah, definitely not pocket change. And that's where we want to welcome in our next guest, Howie Carr, the host of the Howie Carr Show, which you can catch right here on Newsmax TV weekdays at 4 p.m. Eastern. Howie, good to see you.
Thank you, Miranda. Thanks for having me on.
So, just curious, how would this mandate go over in New England?
About as well as I'm sure it's going to go over in California. We have high housing prices here. People are already fleeing California, just like they're fleeing eastern Massachusetts, because they can't afford to buy a house. They're moving to low tax, low government regulation states where it's easier to make a living. And this is crazy. I mean, I read a story earlier this week that California is going to have a hard time coming up with enough energy to provide air conditioning for all of their residents this summer. The price of gasoline in the Golden State is close to $4 a gallon. And it's tough. People are having a rough time. And the government's answer is to dump more silly regulations on them. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, you know, I just moved here actually from California this year, moved across the country to get away from all of that. And it already, this is a little known fact, that it already costs about 30% more to build a house in California. That's before the imposition of this new law. It costs more than any place else in the country, about 30% more. And it's totally impractical because a lot of California is coastline. And I know where I lived along the coast on the beach, there's no way you could put solar panels on because they would get dirty every day. They'd be totally ineffective because of the sea spray. And so it's not only expensive, it's impractical, just like so many things California does. But they're a rich state, so do you think they can handle it?
Well, you know better than me, just having moved out of there. But it's kind of developing into this South American model. You have a very rich class living along the coast, and then you move inland, and there's great poverty. My understanding is the per capita income now in California is below that of Mississippi. I mean, this is not a good thing. And again, I think that the neighboring states, Nevada, Oregon especially, but also further away states, Texas with no income tax. I mean, what's the income tax, the state income tax in California now? It's around 10%, isn't it?
It is.
So
it is.
If you're making the same amount of money in California as Texas, you're making 10%. In reality, you're making 10% more because there's no income tax in Texas, or the richest
state in terms,
or in New Hampshire, or to Florida.
Yeah, the richest state in terms of natural resources.
I'm just saying all the states that are growing.
Yeah. In terms of natural resources, the richest, but in terms of disparity between rich and poor and their housing, you're absolutely spot on. And what happens in California doesn't stay in California, John.
Yeah, and just like the sanctuary city issue, this shows the disconnect between what happens in Sacramento, to Howie's point, and what happens in other places like Lodi, California, these cities that you never hear of.
Yes.
Well, and speaking of disconnected, let's talk about Bernie Sanders, Howie, and his plan to put every American to work. The Washington Post reporting that the proposal will guarantee a job that pays at least $15 per hour and guarantees health care. The robots are going to come, by the way, because of this. The Vermont Senator joins two other possible 2020 contenders, Kirsten Gillibrand and Cory Booker, who have also expressed support for similar proposals in recent weeks. So, Howie, honestly, Bernie Sanders is an interesting guy, but I don't honestly believe he thinks this is a viable position. It's just a campaign, a kind of, campaign season type of idea that he floats out there.
Right, of course. If you're old enough to remember the Make Work projects of the 1970s, it was called CETA, Comprehensive Employment and Training Act. Around here in Boston, it just trained people to get hack government jobs. Some of them, believe it or not, are still in those jobs 40 years later. I don't know anybody who ever got any kind of training or anything. And again, Bernie's timing is couldn't be any worse here. The government has just come out with a report saying unemployment is at a low it hasn't been in decades.
Right.
It's 3.9% unemployment. There are I think there are 6.5 million unemployed Americans, according to government statistics, and there are also 6.5 million unfilled jobs that they can't fill. I mean, if there was ever a time when you didn't need guaranteed government employment, it's right now. And Bernie has come up with this plan because, as you say, he's running for president in 2020.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, though, Howie, going back to those numbers, because we talked about it the other day here on America Talks Live, but yet you didn't see a lot of other media outlets talking about this. And it's important to bring that up because this is the first time ever that this has ever happened when it comes to the jobs, this Labor Department report that you just mentioned, that everyone in America, there's enough jobs out there that everyone in America could have a job, the first time ever. Why don't you think we're hearing more reports about that?
Why? Because it makes Donald Trump look good. It's the same reason we're not hearing any reports about any other good news in the society. Anything that makes Trump look good is going to go on to the back pages if it's going to make the newspapers and the cable newscasts at all. That's just the way it is. The thing is, there is a need for vocational training. I mean, real vocational training. We don't need people going to community colleges and majoring in women's studies or theater arts. I mean, I'm sure those are nice majors and all that, and maybe make you a better, well-rounded human being. But we need to be training people in in the trades, in HVAC, to drive, how to drive trucks. Welders, that's what we need. And unfortunately, I don't think Bernie has any plans, and neither do Cory Booker or the junior senator from New York to put any more money into real vocational training. They're going to train community advocates. I think that's probably what Bernie is wanting to do.
Yeah, and if you look at the average salary of an electrician or a plumber, or if you ever have a plumber come to your house or have to hire an electrician, I thought, well, maybe I should have gone into the trades instead of going to college. It is. I mean,
there's something to be said for a liberal arts degree, but with the cost of tuition being as high as it is now, there's also something to be said for going into trades like you just mentioned, like plumbing. Going
it can be very lucrative.
Yeah, very lucrative.
$100,000 a year. I know unemployed lawyers, and I don't know many unemployed construction workers.
Good point. Howie Carr, thanks for your time today, and be sure to watch Howie Carr's show today, every weekday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on Newsmax TV. Good to have you.
Newsmax TV. Watch us on Dish, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, Verizon Fios, or download our free app. Don't have Newsmax TV? Call your local cable provider and request Newsmax today.